Good evening and welcome to Mindful Live 191. I am your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is Thursday the 16th of February 2023 and it's a Thursday, so you know it's Thursday Talks. No direct topic, we're just talking, we're just discussing. And Joel Chow says not to sound negative, but marriage for men these days is a raw deal. Yeah, it could seem so, but it's not still. We'll get into that. Women like high value men, positive radiation says. Now, I'm talking about this based, discuss Andrew Tate. Yes, I'm talking about this based around the incident that, well, the many incidents or incidences that happened in our political landscape lately, where a certain well-known character in our political system, his many outside dalliances came back to haunt him. You know, they didn't like being outside that much, it seems, and it all came back and came to a point and exploded. Yeah, Nathan, I got the vids and pics. You said, hey, partner, hey, don't say them thing in the chat. Hello, I sent nothing of the such. Whatever I sent is in the Discord. You can go over and join my Discord. I sent nothing of the such. But what I'm saying here is this proves a point and disproves a point of that manosphere red pill online community. It proves and disproves a point. It proves the point where they talk about women wanting high value men, and men who are high value are able to have more than one woman. And yes, that is actually true. That is true. They aren't lying. That is true. And many women will take it to countryman. The TT over on Instagram says Tobago Dasheen hits different. Well, they have a whole Blue Foods festival, so I suppose they know their way around the Dasheen. But yes. It proves a point of the manosphere, Nathan. What if the political leader didn't leak? Hey, hello. I think the lady said it wasn't him who leaked it, and to me, if I were to guess, I would guess he wasn't the leaker. It doesn't make sense for him to leak that. Leaking that in his position right now is just looking for a lot of trouble, a lot of unnecessary trouble. And I think she said as much as it wasn't him who did that leak. So there's that. But yeah, it shows our side. Yes, they are able to have more than one woman and maintain them, and yes, these women want them, and that is true. But the reality is, it's never without friction and never without consequence. Just as I was saying before I joined in over on YouTube here, the reality where they talk about online about young ladies being promiscuous, etc. That's the young lady making the most of when her value in the marketplace is highest, and they beat that horse to death and then beat it while it's dead back to life and back to death again. The dangers of promiscuity in the young woman and the consequences they will pay for that later on in life, etc, etc, etc. And okay, fine, yes, but similarly it's similar with men too. It's similar with men too, where you will face consequences for that later on. That's the benefit of the monogamy there. Yeah, you're at the top of the ladder now, and you have all of these women throwing themselves at you. But that's exactly the thing. You're at the top of the ladder now. It's easy to get you toppled off. That's the kind of point in time where having one person stably in your corner, is very beneficial. And the statistics prove it. Anytime a society changed over to monogamy, the economy of that society ballooned because the high value men were able to increase their value. Actually, that whole polygamous nonsense that many people like to push actually kills your value. It decreases your value. That's not beneficial to the man. That's not beneficial to the woman. It's not beneficial to the society. It's not beneficial to the children. It may have been beneficial to societies when there were lots more wars, and the tendency was that a society would lose a lot of men. So, you know, you're trying to make up for lost men, but by and large, it is not. And the thing is that some men seem to forget with all of this, that some men seem to forget or don't notice. I don't know what's going on with some men. If you have these multiple women there, the reason they are there is because they want you. They all want you. Source for monogamy, increase economy. Well, Dimitri, there's a very interesting book now. I forgot the author's name. A feminist lady released a book recently. She dug a lot into the research there. Good night, Brother Nathan. Good night, Fearless. She dug into a lot of the research where the name of the book is The Argument Against the Sexual Revolution. And she went through to show during society's changes over to monogamy what it did to the economy and did to the stability of the society. She was also pointing out that monogamy marriages was actually greatly beneficial to women. It was the preferable choice of women, and that's where some women get themselves really bound up in modern time, get their head really bounced up and bound up in modern time, thinking that somehow polygamy is beneficial to them. No, it's not. It's beneficial to a few men and nearly no women, really and truly. That's not the technique that most women want. And that's the thing that these polygamous men must understand. Nearly every woman who is in a polygamous relationship would prefer to have the man for herself. At the end of the day, she would prefer. She may be willing to share, but she would prefer. So if the opportunity arises where through some machinations, she may be able to make a move here and a move there, she will do it. I want two-man Roni Cakes says, well, here's the thing, Roni Cakes. Maybe you do, but it's actually highly unlikely. The same lady who wrote that book, she wrote in the book, she included some research on something called sociosexuality. Is it sociosexuality? Yeah. Sociosexuality, where what that speaks about is a person's desire for more than one sexual partner, and the difference between men and women is astronomical. And it's kind of obvious why. You could go down to the gamete level, to the sex cells level, and see the difference between both of them. The sperm has a technique: shoot out as many as possible, and you're trying to get as many as you can. The egg is looking to capture one. It's different techniques, and that's kind of the technique going right the way, all the way up and all the way down in the animal kingdom when it comes to seeing male and female. That's kind of how you decide what is male and female. You find some strange species and you want to know if there's a male and a female. You look for the sex cells and see which sex cell is the smaller sex cell that is produced in a high amount, that goes to find the other one, which is the larger one, which is generally sedentary and waits to be found. And that's how you find out male and female. That's literally one way in biology how you figure it out. Yes, positive radiation, jump in and drop that question. And of course, Dimitri, the response is why we're here. It's Thursday. We're talking on a Thursday, so of course there's going to be a response. The thing with some of these problems that I always say is I find a lot of these things had solutions before that some of us moved away from, and then we're kind of shocked that, you know, we're crashing against the rocks now. Well, no surprise, you moved away from the obvious solutions. Why should his wife stay and why should his wife leave? Now, I don't want to speak about that person's specific relationship, but in another situation that might be similar to that, in another situation that might be similar with similar characters involved, I would say a person's wife, yes, Reeve, you're rolling late. A person's wife may want to stay in such a situation because of the security of such. The security of such that someone in a position with a lot of power, position with obvious access to a lot of resources. There was an allegation in all of this that $75,000 just jumped out like that to help build someone's roof, and you're like, okay, that's access to resources. So as a woman, bear in mind for women, I've said this is another one of those overbeaten dead horses, but for women seeking someone with the stability of resources and the stability to keep you during the to keep you safe during the time when you are less able to work for yourself during pregnancy, etc. In relationships, for women, that is an essential thing. Some people could see it as gold digging if you take it to too much of an extent, but to a limited extent, that's obvious common sense. So yeah, there is that side where, you know, there's the stability of that. Yeah, there's a family, and if you have children together, staying together, even though the relationship may be of such a unique nature, staying together is, if you look statistically, is nearly still always better for the children. Like, you hear, especially women, talk about the dangers of that and abuse and not taking yourself for granted, and don't stay where anybody isn't taking you seriously and all that. And I understand that on the individual level, but if you're looking at it on a much larger cultural, societal, legacy level, you're looking at your children and going on, then children may usually, they will fare better in a relationship, even with the eccentricities, if they stay together. Why should she leave? Well, because the woman, if you're with someone, you're with them because you want them by and large as a woman. That most women, they want one partner. That's generally how it is. They don't have the desire for the sociosexuality as men do. They want that person for themselves. So of course you would want to leave him. No one wants to stay there and take that embarrassment. It's embarrassment after embarrassment, really and truly. Like, no one is looking at her and thinking, like, if you're looking at this as a game of levels where, you know, you're at different classes, you're at a different level. No one is looking at her, at these actions, and thinking, ooh, that's such a cool thing, look at the level she's at. No one is boosting her ego for that. So, you know, it's not something that you exactly want to be in. I doubt it's something that someone would lie down and dream about. You know, this is a situation that I want to be in. So that's why she'd want to leave, obviously. Rooney, what would you have done? Positive Radiation asks. Rooney says, I'd leave because it's not the first. Well, the thing is, to be fair to the man basically said that that's what he does, you know. If he, in his whole long thing, he said, you know, if I want to go outside of my marriage, that's my business. So that's the arrangement he has probably with his wife. But if you, as a man, think about this. You're looking at your future, where you want to be. Okay, he has some level of attainment in. He said he's a self-made man and all of that. He has some level of attainment. But is that something you want? When you're looking at your legacy, your family, the mark you leave on the planet afterwards, do you want your mark to be a cadre of women dragging your name all around the place, with your bedroom business being highlighted around the country? Like, that's not something that brings you any good reputation. I don't think that's something that's desirable. So even though he has his wife willing to stay there during all of this and all of that, yes, he does, and she seems willing to stay, but that's not even a pleasurable thing. Like, what's the benefit of that to him? Okay, you get some momentary pleasure with some unique body types, you get some momentary pleasure, but what's the real benefit of that in the long run? Yeah, Ronnie Cakes. Good night, CM Stickman. It's so dumb. If I answer that in a certain way and my mother here, she might tap me. My mother might tap me for answering that like a fool. Like, oh gosh. And go ahead. Listen, that is a psychological problem. What is the Oedipal mother or something like that? The mother that eats her offspring. That's the narrative of it in the historical sense. A mother's job is to create an offspring that you're going to sacrifice in the long run. That's why, for example, the death of Jesus is such a narrative story. It's such a archetypal story. That's the word I'm looking for, an archetypal story. A mother who makes the perfect offspring, and you still have to look at him be sacrificed in the long run. That's kind of the idea. To make your offspring, and he goes off to create his own little civilization on his own there. And he always has to harken back to you. You are the main sacrifice. That's nonsense, and that's what crumbles the family structure. Society, I find these things are questions and answers that have been answered through history so many times. The how to make a strong civilization, a strong society, the conclusion and statistics on that are out for centuries now. A stable nuclear family structure where you have father, mother, children, and that's a unit, and then they go on to make a unit of their own. And yes, these subunits interact with each other, but the subunits are all head and housed by themselves. So it's a leadership structure for the entire society where you have each family built upon its own family and going like that. That's how you make stable societies. Nisi says that have men out here saying they would choose their mother over their child. These are insane men. These are men who grew up with Hansel and Gretel, Wicked Witch, as their mother. Those are archetypal stories where, if you know the Hansel and Gretel story, they were led out into the forest into a house made of candy, where the woman fed them full, but her aim was to lock them up to in the end eat them. It's the story of of not only Hansel and Gretel, of Rapunzel. The Wicked Witch locks her in the castle, treats her well, but wants her only for herself, doesn't want her to go and find her husband, etc., and grow up like that. That's a Wicked Witch behavior. That's not a maternal behavior. That's a horrible thing. And I think some of these men violent out there is because they're too close to their mother. Something is kinky with them and their moms. Like, bro, it's your mom. You're supposed to distance yourself a bit now. Hmm. Mhm. Yes, I understand. I understand. That's that, and I think I don't like the undue exalted position that some people attempt to put mother in society. I think we have jacked up in society. We have messed up the proper progression of the female ideal story. So we know the male hero's journey. It's the Hercules journey. It's Harry Potter. They've told that story over and over. The male hero's journey, but the female hero's journey: maiden, mother, matriarch. three stages in that, the three M's as it were. The maiden at that stage, and you have all in that stage, but then there's the mother stage, and you have all in that stage, but then there's the matriarch stage. And it seems like, for one, we're extending the maiden, well, attempting to extend the maiden stage forever. That's why there are women in 40s still attempting to act like maidens. Maidens are young women, supposed to be. You're not supposed to be a maiden at 40. But oh God, don't do me that. Don't do me that. And then you're supposed to graduate naturally from there into the mother archetype, where you're integrating. You'd still have that maiden ability that you once did, but now it's matured into a different thing, into the mother archetype. And you lived some time as that, going through that mother archetype, living that world. And don't put me in trouble, Joel. And then from there, you graduate from there into the matriarch archetype. And maybe in our society, we don't have enough matriarchs. We have too many maidens. So we need to be able to graduate through those phases. Matriarchs are such an important part of society. That's the idea. That's the whole thing with family. If you And this is my view on more traditional sense of family, that to me, when not only to me, you look statistically, is the way to have stable societies. You want to stop all that crime going on in many of those places. That's what you need. You need proper matriarchs in their proper places, who are, a matriarch is able to walk through a war, and the war has to stop because no one is going to hurt the matriarch, kind of thing. That's a matriarch. You're supposed to have some of those. So, some people who should be matriarchs are still mothers. You have a son in his 30s. You're supposed to be a matriarch to the legacy that you have left, and you're still acting like his mother, washing his dirty rip-up drawers and all of that kind of nonsense. No, you're supposed to be graduated from that position by now. User numbers. And I used to talk about me, eh? Excuse. How and when should a man learn to lead? A man should, to me, from day one. That's part of proper parenting, where the parent is supposed to be training the child in that from day one. From day one, you're supposed to have that as part of you from day one. So it's not something that you're training your whole life in some other field, and then 1 year before you marry, all of a sudden you magically learn about leadership. No, that won't work. Mother doesn't like sons leading. Well, then you see, that's the problem. Talk Heavy spoke about that as soon as he jumped in the live. That's a problem. And that's the problem sometimes in homes, where you have that kind of lack of structure in homes, where it's a mother only home. And I spoke about this recently, not as a knock on mothers, not as a knock on single mothers, but just as an establishment of what the reality is. A father raising a child alone has about the same likelihood of the child going to prison as a father and a mother raising a child. The people that have the 27 times more likelihood of going to prison are raised by mothers only. It's a mother only thing. And I think that's kind of obvious why mothers are more permissive. Like, anyone who grew up in a two-parent household, they know that the mother is the more permissive one. Women are more agreeable. That's a known thing in their big five character traits. They are more agreeable, so it's easier to get the mother to go along with that and the mother to go along with that. But the idea is that there should be some balance. The man might actually be a good bit too unagreeable, and the woman might be a bit more on the agreeable side, and with the balance you get somewhere in between. That's the ideal. But if you were to mistake on a side, and this is what I think that lesson tells. If you were to make a mistake on a side, the better mistake to make is on too strict. And that's why the single fathers don't have the same problem, because very likely the side they would go on is this too strict side. They wouldn't mistake on the too lenient side, unlikely. they would mistake on the too strict side, and that's very important in that maturing out from adolescence into adulthood phase. That's very important, understanding the gravity of the consequences of wrong decision. What happens when you make a wrong decision? You must understand the consequence of that. And I think lack of fathers is one of the areas we're seeing a lack in that understanding consequences. I grew up single parent. We find it easier to challenge authority, of course, because your authority is your mother. By the time I was 12, 13, I was probably already taller than my mother. Now, my mother is a bit athletic. If I wanted to take her on, I still had to wait a little bit. She might have been able to floor me still. But still, as a young man, by the time you reach 16, unlikely your mother has much, if any, kind of significant physical strength over you. The fact that a male is literally physically imposing to you actually does something. The different tone in a male voice has a different reaction. Listen, and these kind of things annoy me so much when I see, like, online on the internet, people try to deny these things when it's so obvious to anyone around. You go shout at a dog as a man and as a woman and you see a difference. My dogs react differently to female voices and male voices. I remember I had a bull terrier, favorite dog. She lived a nice long life. Oreo, black and white dog. Really nice dog. But yes, and that dog would disrespect women. The dog was sexist. She was a female, but she was sexist. That dog was sexist. She would come and bite a slipper off of your foot. And if you're a woman, you're telling her, behave over you. And remember, she's a bull terrier, so she has some size. Behave over you. And she'll bite it off your foot and go, bully you out of it. A male voice, behave over you, and she leaves. There's a difference. There is literally that difference. Like, come on, man. There is that difference. Yeah, man. What's that? User numbers. What's up? Yeah, I hearing you in a Jezreel. I hearing you talk heavy. I not hearing user. What's that picture user has there? I don't know the person. The person probably had something to say and they just didn't know how to make a good profile. That dog was in the manosphere before the manosphere exists. Well, she probably started it. I think user using the toilet. Oh gosh, oh gosh. Listen, these two were missing in the live for a while, you know, and the live was the chat was all peaceful and docile. Now these two come back and is back and I'll right through. You see these two in the live? Shiny Douglas. Yes, he is. Mm-hmm. Yes. The thing is, men and women, fathers and mothers, the importance and the timing of their importance is different. Like, if as a single father in the first 3 years of life, chances are your child might die. If you're a single father in the first 3 years of life, especially without if you had a talking in a vacuum here, you have no access to any woman as a man with a child in the first 3 years, high likelihood the child dies or grows up with less nutrition. Women in those first 5 years of life, modern times have made it that, you know, you could go out there and get formula and all of that. But without access to formula, a baby is dead in very short time without a mother. Very, very short time. A mother could walk with a baby and go on a trip. She alone, she don't even take any luggage. She could go carry that baby across the land. if single daddy thinks he could go and pick up baby and carry the baby on a trip across the land, like I'm talking even hunter gatherer kind of days, you pick up your child and want to go on a trip from one area to the next. As a single daddy, that's a dead baby. Single mommy could do that. So there is that point in life where women are essential, more essential than men. Men aren't needed in that point in time. But then, as it goes further, men become more needed, and that's just the reality. Like, it's not like pointing that fact out to me isn't to say that women aren't necessary, or women aren't good parents, or mothers aren't good parents. So a lick at against single mothers. It's a thing that you shouldn't be a single mother because you don't make a baby by yourself. The biological process requires two people. So to me, the sociological process kind of is obviously going to require two people too. Which one? That's what I'm thinking. What you sent me was the location of real heavy bacchanal, boy. Real heavy bacchanal. I can't even remember the other piece before the bacchanal throughout all the rest that was being discussed. What was that? All right, yes. Well, that's for positive radiation and those guys. That's for positive radiation and those guys where they show the unspent money from the THA budget. You could actually find, if you know where to look, find where it's being spent, and it's not being spent on making more jobs for Tobagonians. It's being spent on, well, it is being spent on making more jobs, URP jobs, not sustainable jobs for the future. So there is that. It doesn't seem like they don't seem like they're making moves to change the way Tobago is run. That's the way. But I said that yesterday. The evidence that has come out so far doesn't point in the direction of giving much hope that they are doing things much different in Tobago. The, he is here.
Okay, high positive radiation. So yeah, I am not a tourism person, right? Now, granted, I did study tourism for a little because I studied at the hotel school, and that's part of it, tourism, right? Um, I did reach out to my lecturer, who is very versed in the space, and she was telling me that the night last night they had the Tobago Tourism Agency, is it? Had a meeting discussing the same thing we were discussing, which was direct flights from the UK to Tobago, right? And obviously they were saying, how ineffective it was cost-wise because whatever, it's too expensive or whatever. But when you have one, Tobago has like, let me say, 7 flights, if so much, a week, international flights, and probably 2 come from the UK, right? Which is the BA, and where does Condo come from? I don't know. There's BA, Condo, and KLM. I believe there's 3 flights at a time. You could correct me if I'm wrong. Positive radiation. As I state, tourism is not really my strength. I'll just follow as I could. So right, I know they have a few international flights, probably 5 to 7 international flights a week, right? Which is crazy. But in the long run, it may seem a bit expensive to have to fork out the amount of money to bring direct flights over, but it would work out in the long run. Like, if you want to do the sustainable thing, it would be to start off by spending that money up front.
To me, what you're saying there, and I may be less of an expert in tourism than you. I just read a lot of news. But to me, what you're saying there seems to make obvious sense. The a problem that I was speaking about when we were talking about that yesterday, a problem that I understand in Tobago, is that if you're dealing with a tourism market. If you want to go out and be an entrepreneur in tourism, you need the tourists to come in, and that's not something that you as a business person can really deal with. You don't have anything to do with that. So bringing the flights, if you're bringing the flights and too few people are coming, then to me the problem isn't with the flight. The problem is creating a product that is going to encourage more people to come. Closing off the flight decreases the possibility of people coming. Like, closing off the flight isn't going to increase anyway the possibility that any more people are going to come. To me, is you keep the flights going and try to tweak your product. Anytime the number drops, the problem isn't with the flight, the problem is with the product. That's at least how I would see it. Yeah, radiation.
I am not the tourism expert. I think he really is. He's very close to that agency. That is the most I would say concerning that and him. He's very close to that agency. However,
he wasn't there.
He was there. He just would not identify himself. But he was present. What I would say, though, I think the problem with our tourism product here is, one, the product is poor, and two, the marketing. Because even if you don't have direct flights, once there is proper marketing, people will try and ways to come to the island. You know where I'm coming from? So once you have proper marketing and the product is of a particular level, but then again, everybody has played politics too. Because from what you would have seen from the investigations, a lot of the downfall in our sector or tourism as a whole, it has to do with marketing and access to the island as the two major issues. Because there's also the yachting area that's been growing on the island of Tobago. Charlotte is the main hub for yachters, yes, but there are a number of yachters who goes to Charlottesville. I don't know, you would see them inside Pigeon Point and outside there too. So if you market it as a yachting destination as well, without the need for direct air travel, you can also bring in a different type of tourist.
No yachting and no marina.
And to me,
I saw the architectural drawings for a marina that was supposed to go in Plymouth. Under 2 or 3 key secretaries back. Went to the architect to discuss the drawing with them. The problem they had was a private investor wanted to do it. We were told by a former chief secretary, why didn't come to the THA for that? Why a private investor must come to you to do it? Why didn't come to us as the THA? And everything went straight to the Stanley Park dump.
You see, that right there is the problem, and that's what I was talking about last night. When the THA, and I think some people were thinking in the chat, at least some people in the comments in the chat, like they felt like I was saying that about Tobagonians, but I wasn't talking about Tobagonians, because Tobagonians are Trinbagonians. We are all the same people. I wasn't talking about the people. I was talking about the governance, the THA. When they get accustomed to running a budget that they don't have to consider how much money they make, they're going to get 2-point-something billion anyhow. They run budgets like that without considering how they're going to expand the economy on the island. What do you mean you're asking why private? Okay, if the THA does the investment and does the building at the beginning, yeah, that's one, the initial investment. But there's a continuous pay on to keep whatever it is maintained and running and paying the workers. That's why you keep with the ballooning repeat costs that are just salaries only. Almost all of the cost is just salaries only, because here you build something, but then you have to put workers inside of it. Here's the thing: if a private company did that, they would put workers, but the salary would be on them. That's not on you to worry about. Unfortunate, but that's not just Tobago. That's not just Tobago. Trinidad has the benefit, to me. Trinidad has the benefit of having a lot more resources moving through by and large, so it's easier to just create things like that. But my problem with the PNM government, as I always say, the PNM government seems to be a government that moves in that kind of direction. They think the government is the one that is responsible for making the most of the economic moves, or the status quo people who are always there, people who have been there for the last 60 years. They are the real business people. They are the people. No, you can't just fly by night. That's why, like, I could understand why some people may be suspicious about, like, Pesh that recently came out there, because I'm surprised a company like Pesh came through. A new company just out of the blue came through under the PNM. Well done. I am very surprised. Legitimately very surprised. And people were asking about that. I saw TSTT, their own got permission. I think they're calling their own paper or something like that. PAYPR, I think it is, to do that same kind of e-wallet business. And people are asking about the utility of it. Let me show you a simple utility of it. Selfishly. For example, in this live, if, like, some people in this life have spoken about, sometimes in joke but sometimes in seriousness too, about how would somebody send you money if you're making any money from this? No, I don't. But if I were to post a bank account and you had to go to your bank and try to make an online no, you're not going to do that. But if it's a Pesh wallet and I post the location to a Pesh wallet, that's just something I have up somewhere there, and it's just a matter of swiping something to send someone $5, and it's not going to cost you any more to send them $5. You'd more likely do that. So things like that, where the e-wallets and technology like that become so handy. They come in so handy for things like OnlyFans and that kind of business too. Very handy, very handy. Many things are not run as a business. True.
But Nathan, I want to throw something else into the mix.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
Right, so my specialty is really aviation. So I want to make one recommendation. When we compare the air traffic at Piaco and the air traffic at Anwea, that is ENR Robinson International, you will see where there are hours in Trinidad where they allow student pilots. I think it's about 4 or 5 hours for the day. They have a 3-hour morning slot and sometimes a 3 or 4-hour evening slot. Why not in the recalibration of the Tobago airport, you create a domestic terminal into a space for student pilots? Because one, your air traffic is not as busy as student or university tourism is a big money thing, because if you have student pilots here, their parents are going to come here at some point in time. You're going to have accommodations. Look at how we use in D'Agostino operates within a whole area. That's a whole business hub by itself. So if you create that type of space, even in and around the compound area, is a different style, a different form of tourism. It will be profitable. But sometimes when we share these ideas as a young persons in these spaces, we are told, we got fixed. Yeah. Or sometimes they will blank your idea, blank your proposal. 3-4 years later, is the same proposal is still going in the completely opposite way, completely out of time, in a whole market has left. And then you now come to say, the young people are not interested in politics, and we don't want to do that, and it's only old people we get in, and we can't find candidates for president.
I understand what you're saying, and I like that idea. I like ideas like that. But the thing is, from talking to politicians, what you realize is to change things from going the way they have always gone takes a lot of work. So for someone to do that, they would have to do a lot of work. Chase down proposals, chase down ideas, etc., etc., etc. The easiest thing for a politician to do is just to allow things to continue as they're going. Also, as a politician, as a decision maker, if you make the decision to change something or to introduce something, if it goes awry, if it goes wrong, if something fails, it falls on you. If you just continue to do the same way it has always been done, if something fails, something goes awry, that's just how it has always been done. That's not my fault. It's like I was talking about that during the pandemic. Some of the decisions that we made in Trinidad and Tobago, I think they were made not based on science, obviously not, but based on the fact that the rest of the world was doing it. So if we didn't do it, then if something went wrong, then the government has a lot of consequences to face. But if they just did the same thing the rest of the world was doing, and we ran into the same consequences where our economy is faltered and many businesses closed like many other places in the world, no one is going to look at the Prime Minister and the government and say, look what you did, because it's not only they did it, everyone else did it. So you can't look at me and say it was me who did that. Yeah, Ronnie, let me hear you.
So just to question, because I don't for that. Whereas if you do have one in Tobago, if you do have the school in Tobago, then you do have the need for the piloting.
But very likely,
Because then it would,
Ronnie, very likely with something like that, I wouldn't doubt if they announced that they're willing to allow permission for it, it's going to happen. I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that. The many of those things, like he was talking about with the plans he saw for the marina, and it was a private operator. Many of those things, when you recognize what it is that the government really has to do, is create the avenue for permissions. Similar with the no man's land. I am sure there may be upwards of 100 companies in this world with enough money and interest to want to develop no man's land. But it's just a matter of if they can get the permission from the government. That's where the government comes in. And that's what I keep saying. The job of government is to be a facilitator. They are there. The discussion I had with the chairman, with the CEO of the TTMA, the problem with imports, the reason we can't import fruits from Guyana to run our manufacturing here, we have to go and import things from Australia instead of right there. The reason is because the government is supposed to structure something to allow the permissions to do that import, and people aren't doing that. So sometimes you might be surprised that, yeah, there may be people willing. So like Pesh was willing since 2017. So Trinidad and Tobago could have had online e-wallets transferring of money since 2017 with intent. But we had to wait 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 7 years, and it still isn't here yet because we're waiting for the government to be the proper facilitator for such things. Doesn't an average aviation license cost about 900,000 TT? Ooh.
No, but Aaron, so in this and you are so correct because I know, even from interaction with some of my lecturers, I studied aviation in Trinidad. And I know some of my lecturers were saying there are foreign aviation institutions. Embry-Riddle was interested in partnering locally to do some training and to bring some courses up to level because he was an Embry-Riddle alumni. So they was interested. Excuse me. Emirates was in sorry. Emirates was in conversation with the government to do some training as well too. So there are options. So yeah. But it's because it's just to create the gateways for these institutions to get in. That is all.
And what you recognize very often, and that's where I keep pounding the PNM government, is that the PNM government is one of the government that oftentimes shuts those gateways. Many of the other government, the partnership, particularly in my lifetime, when they were there, the atmosphere for doing business was much more open. Many people were able to come in there. That's just the reality of it. The PNM seems much more intent on keeping those gateways shut. Now, that could be partly just because they are better at the bureaucracy and administration. Some parties just may not be good enough at bureaucracy and administration to keep those gates closed and man them, etc., etc. But the PNM seems really good at that. Really good at making sure they corner you into certain angles. You look at you just if you're into business, you just look at it during their tenure and you see it screaming out at you. Just making sure I had watch it side eye. What the price of the aviation license? Yeah, it's expensive. Yeah. But the thing is, as Positive Radiation was saying, I have no doubt that people would want to do that. If I had an aviation school, because aviation school, as you're seeing with the license there, aviation school is typically the area of rich people children, the children of the wealthy, by and large, or the semi-wealthy, upper middle class. If you're looking at that kind of sphere, what better place to go learn how to fly than to fly around a scenic small island? That sounds perfect to me. Like if I'm a millionaire out there and I want to just send my son somewhere to go and learn how to fly quick, a scenic small island, beautiful. Go down there and that's wonderful. So I could see that. I could see that just needing the permissions for something like that to happen.
It's not like it doesn't happen. I flew out of student pilot already. From Tobago, we went to Trinidad.
Yeah, I know that does happen.
But it's just, I understand what you're saying, where the permission need to be granted.
to actually facilitate something like that to make more money in those endeavors. That's the difference. People see the United States, the land of the free and the land of opportunity and stuff, and they wonder about sometimes what's the difference there. That's one of the main things there. The United States was built on a strong free market capitalist system, so you could go there and start a business and sell anybody whatever they desire, and they would have to pay you for it, and you go and you make your business. And that's why people often, if people are industrious, they go there and almost all of the time make a lot more money if they're industrious, generally speaking, because there's that opportunity there. While if you are an industrious person and you go to, like, the opposite example of that is in Africa. Africa held on to leftist policies during the 20th century. They held on to a lot of leftist policies. So Africa, similar to Trinidad, has some of that real difficulty to do business. The ease of doing business is like zero. It's not easy to do business there. That's why everyone has to be corrupt. Even if you're industrious in Africa, it's hard for you to actually do business. That's why you'd see some people living dirt poor in Africa. They transfer them into Europe with their families, and all of a sudden they become millionaires in Europe. Like, how did that happen if they were dirt poor in Africa? Because the industry that they were expending out there, the system that they were under, made it impossible for them to actually gain the benefit of their industry. That's the thing, and that's where government comes in. That's the importance of government. The importance of government isn't, like for that Africa example, isn't to go out there and give them URP jobs and give them handouts and give them a donation and give them hampers so they could eat and sponsor their children to go to school and buy shoes for them. That's not what the people really want. That's not the job of the government, as grand as that might be. That's not a good thing for the government to be doing, really and truly. What the government should be doing is facilitating the economy to provide these things. I was listening to an African talk about those problems, and they were saying how many of the problems are exacerbated when people just try to help without understanding. So you said they were talking about Tums. I don't know how many of you know the Tum shoes. Buy one, give one. When you buy a Tum shoes, they supposedly give one away. And they were talking and saying that ideas like that actually further cripple economies down there. Because now the man who was just starting his little shoemaking entrepreneurial business, he can't fight the price of free. He can't battle with the price of free. So instead of his neighbors buying his shoes that he's making, now they get a shipment of Tums free that floods the market and gluts the market, and now you kill the economy for shoes in there. No, that's not what is needed. What is needed is facilitation of the economy, of the socio-political and economical structure to allow for those rights that would allow people to get the benefit of their labor and the benefit of their industry. That's what helps. You want to get people wealthy in Trinidad, allow them to be able to start a business, make the money from it, and keep the money from it as their own. Make that able to be accomplished as easily as possible, and you will see so many of these societal ills just marvelously solved. Yeah, Ronnie, hand up.
This is my last point because my phone on 7% and I need to go. Anyway, are you hearing me again?
Yeah, real good.
ATM.
You buy the ATM, you say?
In the ATM booth in a second, you only will get back. Anyway, so I met a guy a few months ago actually. He is from the UK. And he had a contract with ministry. I don't know if I can say that, with finance to
I don't know. Don't fall yourself up and get yourself in trouble in my lives, eh?
And you know, he will always say he works in Kenya. He worked in Europe, obviously. He's a man from the UK. So he worked there, he worked in Kenya, he worked in several African countries. And he said here is by far the most bureaucratic country he has worked in. And even and more backward than a lot of the African countries that he has worked in. Like, they were willing to accept the policies that he put forward. And we, as in Trinidad and Tobago, they have thought every single policy that he would have brought forward to them. So,
You see,
consideration.
I put a little clip from the conversation I had with the TTMA guy. I put a clip in it, and he spoke about that. We were speaking about that, where the fact is people benefit. That's the problem. People benefit. There are people benefiting greatly from the level of bureaucracy, because what bureaucracy does, and this was something that I was learning about and listening about when I was looking at that in Africa too. And they were talking about the corruption that many people talk about in Africa, where many of those African nations are extremely corrupt, lots of bribes, etc. And they were saying that it's not that the human beings are more corrupt, but it's just that the level of bureaucracy requires corruption, as it were. When there's so much bureaucracy, in order for you to get something done, if you want something done, you kind of have no choice. The man was talking to me about, and he didn't call a name, so I don't know the name, but one of the major businessmen in Trinidad, and he said the guy has a line in his accounting books called ease of doing business or something to that effect, where he has to pay out money every month in order to just get things to run in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's why people love the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy allows for each bureaucrat at each level that tells you, stop, wait, let's sign this paper before you go. Now you have to pay them and pay the next one and pay the next one. And then we're surprised that Trinidad is halted when we look at our economy and we look at the diversification of our economy. If you want our economy diversified, you have to facilitate it.
Yeah, and by the way, he didn't get back his contract. It was passed in cabinet and everything, and then the not the PS, but somebody higher was like, oh, we need to put this to, is it a procurement committee or a tender committee or something like that, or a valuation committee. And his contract, his post was valuation.
And that's the thing with bureaucracy allows for, you see, people who are skilled at being bureaucrats can work in a bureaucratic system. I don't know how many of you have ever experienced that, where maybe you're not into that bureaucratic system, but you go in somewhere to do some work and you stumble upon someone who is good at it and they don't like you or something like that, and you're shocked the level of terror that could be brought down on you from bureaucracy. People who know how to work bureaucracy can get you fired. You think that in bureaucracy, wait, you can't fire anyone in these bureaucratic systems. You may be surprised. You may be surprised. They work their way around it because they are accustomed weaving and dealing inside that bureaucratic system, and your contract is just not re-upped. And you're like, how did that happen? Bureaucracy. The bureaucracy is strangling us. And the thing is, once you start bureaucracy, there's a quote from someone of those American presidents, I believe, where they said the bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. And that's the nature of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy creates bureaucracy. So you have to send the paper here to get a signature from this one and permission from this one, and this committee has to sign over for this committee and this committee, and then because of that you need to form a committee to collate all of this, and then you need to form an overseeing committee to oversee all of this. It just expands. It creates more and it creates more and it creates more. And again, that's one of the problems with the PNM. So the PNM seems real expert at making committees. They're experts at making committees and companies. When they get into power, you can be assured there's going to be a new committee, a new company, a new something. And listen, people get paid from those committees. Do not get tied up. People make a lot of money in those committees. You get hired for a little small job there, and you might be, your ears might be shocked to hear the kind of number. Over in Tobago, their positive radiation, for example, the Tobago intellectual who has a brother inside of the THA cabinet, basically, and he got something like 20-something thousand for proofreading the budget. You know, if you have those connections, the kind of money you can make from some of those committees and those little hirings you see all about Trinidad and Tobago, that's a lot of money. I don't like that. I don't like that because those aren't things on the free market. It's not like your skill per se is giving you that money. You're getting an advantage just based on political friends. That's not how you get a solid economical system, in my view. It's not how.
Listen, I want to jump in.
Yeah, man.
A little bit. I don't know if you remember there was a time another airline wanted to come into the domestic market. I think it was Jet. I could be correct. What do you think was the major block from Jet getting into the market, one? And two, do you suspect, believe or have any reason to, or it might be possibly a video option, the relationship between the regulator, the state, and the airline? Do you think that will affect productivity, profitability, and allowing other airlines to come in and to be competitive in and among the region?
The thing is, for example, in Trinidad and Tobago, that's why I've always had a problem with state-owned and state-run companies. State-run companies are very ticklish. It's a very ticklish thing. We're seeing that right now with T and Tech. When you have a state-run company, how do you charge a fee? What's the fee you're going to charge? If it's a state-run company, people are going to want you to charge a reasonable fee. What's reasonable? Reasonable to whom? Reasonable to what level of society? Reasonable to the middle class? Reasonable to the upper class? Reasonable to the lowest classes? What's reasonable? And if you're talking about a state company, if you're talking about a state company and it is outside of the free market, the state has to control everything in that sense. And then, now the state isn't just the businessman in this case. The state is the regulator. The state would be in charge of whichever organization is doing the regulation. So the state is the business person, the state is the regulator, and then the state is the legislator. The state has to write the laws to facilitate, to allow people to come in, allow people not to come in, etc. The state holds every position in this field, and it becomes problematic. It becomes very problematic. Now, to me, the ideal for the state is, yes, the state can have a function as regulator, the state can have a function as legislator. But if the state leaves aside, the businessman part of it, then the business person part of it, you don't have to necessarily worry about favoritism. It's just about who has the best operational model. So RL spoke there about profit versus operational cost. Whoever is able to come into the market and make the most profit with the lowest operational costs, they're going to win. That's just how it's going to go. But when there's a state company in there, so for example, as the state, if the state is looking at this, you're talking aviation, if the state is looking at this and they see, okay, if we bring in another airline into this market, this airline is going to go at the very same routes that Caribbean Airlines goes on. For the state, they're seeing that they're going to welcome in a competitor. And would that be best for the state? For the state in terms of profiting off of CAL? It might not be. Would they want more competition in that sense?
But we saw that same thing with TSTT, because TSTT and Me Too was $400 or $500
Yep.
We were thinking that is the best and that is the most discounted price. And as Digicel came into the market, we saw a significant drop in the cost of cell phones almost immediately.
And it wasn't just the cost of cell phones, you know. The part that when I remember and think back on that time, I remember for cell phones it was something like $3 or $5 per minute or something like that was the cost of the call. The call itself, the cost of a call plummeted. Remember, they reached a 1 cent call during the heyday of that Digicel versus Bio Mobile kind of competition business. And that's the benefit of competition. And if the state is running a company and the state is in charge of allowing the competition in, would it be in the best interest of the state allowing that kind of competition? No, it might not be in their best interest. So they may not do it. I like that idea, and the one of the major takeaways from that idea, well, we have the side where the state is involved and clamping things down, and one of the problems the US falls in. So the US has that opportunity, and I prefer that. That's something that I could admire over there. But they have that free market opportunity. But how their state, their government hinders it on their side is that too big to fail idea that they have in the United States, where in companies could run an unprofitable business model, and in the end, when the business model crashes, the government would bail them out because they're saying this company is too big. If this company fails, it's going to hurt the economy. I don't like that idea either. I think if you're big and you run an unprofitable, unsustainable business model and you fail, then you should fail. That's the market choosing. That's the market evolving. The survival of the fittest. That's the market doing its job. But when you have, and it's the same complaint I have for the Calypso tents. That's the reason I think the Calypso tents are dying, because the Calypso tents were too big to fail. The government kept bailing out the Calypso tents from failing. So now we're seeing when there's a late subvention to the NCC didn't get enough money. All over Trinidad, Carnival celebrations are being abridged and cut short and hampered because they didn't get enough government money. Because that's what they got accustomed to. They didn't have to face the free market. So now the Calypso tents have no idea what the free market wants. They have no idea what the free market wants. And that's the problem. When you have that too big to fail model, they don't have to be tuned in to what the customer wants. They have to be tuned into what the state wants. And that's the problem in the United States that they face there, where the companies now, they're playing a political game because they know that that's where they get the most of their money from. At high season on Carnival or Christmas might cost about $2,000 TT. Airline prices fluctuates. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. They're supposed to. Again, free market, they're supposed to. If you have more demand and less supply, then the prices are supposed to go up. If you have less supply and more demand, if you have more supply, and less demand, then the prices are supposed to drop. That's the way it's supposed to go. It's not supposed to remain the same. And that kind of thing actually helps regulate things, So, like I was hearing people talking about that during the pandemic. Some groceries were selling bottled water ridiculously expensive. And what someone was talking about, an economist was talking about that, what that actually helps to do, if it's done without the unfair side, it actually helps to regulate. It helps that someone isn't going to go in there and buy 1,000 bottles of water during peak time because the prices are just going to raise too high. It's going to be unsustainable for you to do that. You would be able to buy only one bottle, but that would make sure that everyone is able to access that one bottle to the price increase. So the price fluctuation is good. Ski says, but I see the point you're trying to make. You can't compare our companies to those in the US because our state bodies are more inefficient. But I see the point you're trying to make. I don't think our state bodies are necessarily all that more inefficient. I think state bodies on a whole are inefficient. That's why in the US, if you look at the US political arguments, the US, especially one side of the US, is constantly arguing to keep the state out of their business. The arguments they have about politics there in the healthcare system, where one side is arguing for Medicare for all and one side is saying that they don't want that, and people are confused. Why would you not want the government to pay for your healthcare? Well, that's why they don't want the state to get involved in these matters, because they think the state is going to run it more inefficiently. While one side is saying that the state, if the state gets involved, the state would be able to care for everyone. The other side is saying, well, we don't think the state is capable of doing that. The state doesn't run business well. The state doesn't execute logistics well. They can't do something like that. And that's where their arguments are. And I could understand that. To me, if you listen to enough of what I say, you may guess which side I lean on more with those kinds of arguments. I think the state has shown itself to be inefficient. And I think that's because the incentive structure of the state, the incentive structure to politicians is different. The incentive structure to a businessman is different than the incentive structure to the state. If I have a taxi driver, a taxi service, I would want their incentive structure based on providing the best service to all the customers they have. That's what's going to give me the best taxi ride. But if I have someone with a taxi service, but how they get the job of being the taxi man is they get everyone to vote for them. People who don't even take taxis vote for them to be the taxi driver. Then how they drive the taxi may have nothing to do with the actual customers, the paying customers of the taxi service, and the people to decide how the taxi service would run. The taxi service would run based on how they get everyone to choose them every time. And that's the thing, the incentive structure for politicians is based on getting more votes. That's how you win as a politician. You don't win by making the country make a profit. The country could make a loss. The country could bust. The country could turn upside down. You win by getting more votes in the next election. That's how you win as a politician. And how do you get more votes in the next election? It would be wonderful if you got more votes by running the most successful government. That would have been wonderful, but that's not exactly true. Generally speaking, for most democratic elections in the Western world in modern times, how you win is by spending enough money to get your name out to enough people, for enough people to recognize your name and vote for you. A lot of it has to do with money. A lot of how you win the next election has to do with money. So, how do you get that money? From financiers. So the incentive structure for politicians is making the financiers happy. Because making the financiers happy is going to allow me to get voted in again. So would I want someone whose incentive is to make some other rich person happy? Would I want them to open a company and run it? How is that company going to run? But this population like free things. Give them free things and you win. Or at least promise them free things and you win. And that's the problem. The incentive structure. There's a quote, I can't remember how the quote is phrased exactly. One of the founding fathers over in the Americas, he spoke about democracy would last as long as it takes for the population to recognize they could vote to steal out of the treasury or something like that. And that's the idea. Listen, 1.4 million people in Trinidad, not 1.4, except the children. So let's say 1.1 million, 1.2 million people, 1.1 million people in Trinidad, let's see. I'm just calling a number. 1.1 million people in Trinidad can vote. If we break this down, divide Trinidad into people who give a net gain into Trinidad and people who take a net negative out of Trinidad. In terms of, there are some people who through their work, through their industry, the taxes that they pay, the taxes that their company pays, the foreign exchange that they bring in, etc., 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 they bring in a profit for the country in general. The country makes money off of them. But there are some people who, through sometimes, some people in legitimate difficult situations, they find themselves in a very difficult, unfortunate situation. The country makes a loss off of them. The country has to pay out money to them. Now, both of those people get to vote. If more people are taking money out of the system, fewer people are putting money into the system. The more people who are taking money out of the system are a majority. They get to vote. Wouldn't the more people taking money out of the system just vote to keep taking more and more money from the less people? And that's the problem with democracy that we often fall into. The idea that democracy is the best solution. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. If I can get enough people to get behind me to say, well, our idea is that we're going to take all the money from those evil rich people and we're going to redistribute it to ourselves, and all of us strugglers out there are going to get more. I may get many people to vote for me for that, and that might be an ideal way to run the country. Sky says the free mentality only there because of how the middle class is, how far the middle class is from the upper class. I disagree. I don't think the free mentality is there because of wealth of wealth inequality. I don't think so. I think the free mentality is there because we still have the echoes of colonialism. Our society still has a lot of that remnant colonial mindset where we expect the colonial masters to take care of the colony. We live like we live in a colony, and we expect someone else out there, the alieners, them go take care of that, them will do that, not us. We don't see this as this being our land where we are going to take care of whatever has to happen in this land. No, we don't have that kind of ownership and belonging to the land. Well, some people, our society in general, it seems like we have that colonial mentality still, and that's why we have a lot of that free thing. I don't think that has to do with wealth inequality, because there are places with bad distribution of wealth that don't have the same kind of mentality. Should be an easier credit market, to be honest, allow us to take out large loans with almost no collateral. Woo! Vote for who? Both parties equally horrible because middlemen have to get paid. Yes. In America, you can have 3,000 TT in the bank and take out a loan for 300,000. Give us easier credit. Positive Radiation says if a politician can on the compound of a popular business and tell them don't vote for me and you will lose your job. And so said, so done almost 1 year later. No surprise there. True, but if you talk like that, people wouldn't like it. Completely agree, though. Yeah, that's the nature of it. That's the problem with politics. That's always been the problem with politics. It's difficult for someone to decide to go in there and actually run the country how it should run and get benefit out of that. It's not something that is very common. Let's put it that way. Those aren't the politicians that very often rise to the top. If you want to rise to the top, you make as many promises as possible. You get the people to vote for you, and that's how you rise to the top by and large. All right, any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments, folks? Or shall we dive out? Lovely Thursday evening. It seems like there aren't many more questions or any more questions or comments inside of the live. And if there are no comments or questions inside of the live, that's no problem. It's 11:13 now and we can call it a night. We'll see each other again for the next Mindful Live tomorrow evening around 9:30 p.m. Tune in then. I wonder if we have any fighter jets to shoot down the UFOs. No, we have no fighter jets. No, sir. Those are very expensive. Good night, bro. Take care of yourself. Thank you. Fighter jets are so expensive. Ukraine, being a much larger country, they're struggling for fighter jets. They're begging for fighter jets right now. Please send us some fighter jets. Those are very expensive to own and to maintain and upkeep. I don't think we even have any fighter jet pilots. Who's going to fly the fighter jets in Trinidad? Our Air Guard? What aircraft do our Air Guard fly? We barely have cars for the TTPS. Nah, that's a lie. I think we have a lot of cars for the TTPS. If you want to drive a new car, go and turn a police. You're bound to get a new car to drive. Them fellas have too many new cars. Alright, people, I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. This has been the Mindful Live. I am your host, Nathan Springer. Thank you guys for tuning in. This was brought to you by Mindful Education, the educational institution and service that I run. If you want or are interested in some of that tutoring that we offer, head over to Mindful Education over there on Instagram and hit me a message wherever you see me. Until the next Mindful Live, folks, keep well, peace out, keep safe out there, people. Hold it on. Laters.